Hello, I'm from Solibor's production, and welcome to this series of lessons focusing on set realistic fire on a zombie character inside of Maya 2017. Creating realistic fire has important role in visual effects industry. Fortunately for Maya artists, this process has been significant improvements in Maya 2017. We pull Maya Fluid system apart here in this course so that you can fully understand how to use it. We start out by learning exactly the fundamentals of Maya fluids like 3D container and emitters. From here, we learn how to apply our basic knowledge of Maya fluid on our zombie character. In doing this, we learn how to change density and temperature parameters in order to get a realistic fire effect. Then we're going for shading and rendering process to get the best look for our fire. By completing this course, you will have intermediate and in some cases advanced knowledge of Maya fluids. So, let's start burning our zombie character. Hey guys, let's start the first lesson. So, the first step in creating a fluid effects, smoke, dust, fluid, any fluid, like fire. But the first step is to create a 3D container. So first we're going to the FX, and here we have the fluids menu. So you can create your 3D container here, or you can just go to the FX shelf and create this icon. So I just will create a 3D container by clicking on this icon. So now you can see that we have a 3D container. Well, the most important thing about the 3D containers is that, your fluid is always in this box, not outside it. So nothing of your effects will just exist outside of the box. So always have in mind that if you have an effect that is somehow large, you should just scale and size this container in that amount of space. So we have our 3D container, and we can just place it anywhere that we want. So we have most of the time two issues with the container properties, and the first one is the size. As I said, you don't never just scale your container from the channel box. These numbers for scale should always remain at 1. And always, if you just want to scale or resize your box, your 3D container, just resize it from these three parameters. Here we have the size for X, Y, and Z. So if you just want a bigger 3D container, for example in X, you can just change it here. So never touch this scale. Always they should remain at 1. Okay, so for example, if you have a sphere and for example you want to have an explosion that maybe it's in this amount of space, never just go for scale like this, never do these kind of effects. Just keep your scale at 1, and you can always go here and like 200 by 200. Now this is the right pipeline to do your resizing, and that's because if you just scale it with these scale in channel box, your resolution will not be shown correctly, and now it's time to go for the resolution and explain it how to get the right resolution. Okay, so let's just delete this sphere and make it back to where it was, 10 by 10 by 10. Okay, so most of the artists just think if they just increase this parameter, the base resolution, they got the higher resolution for their fluid. Of course, this is correct, but you know, there is some misunderstanding here. You know, this base resolution number is not actually really important for us, because you know, if we just want to have a good resolution, we should see the scale of our scene. So if we have a lower scale, so we need less resolution, less base resolution, and if we have higher scale, so it just depends on the scale of our scene. So the best way to just do the resolution is to think about it like, you know, we don't really need this number. We need the number, the ratio between our base resolution and the highest number in our size. Okay, so let me show you. Imagine that we have 20 in X, okay, like this, and we wanna have a good resolution for this size. You know, the resolution is based on our size. So always, you know, as I said, the ratio between the resolution and the size is really important. So, you know, most of the time the resolution of 2 or the ratio of 2 or 3 is for, we just call them lowers, and the ratio of 5, we call them somehow production, and the higher than 5 is production resolution. So how we can just define it? So here we have, you know, the highest number in our size is now 20. You know, 20 is greater than these two. So we just stick with this 20, and if we want to have a production quality resolution, so we just, as I said, the ratio is really important. Well, if I just make the base resolution 100, now you can see that 100 divided by 20, it is 5. So our ratio is 5. That's how we can just define our resolution. So the most important thing in resolution, as I said, is the ratio. So, you know, in lots of production, the production resolutions are the ratio of 10. So we have the size of 20 here. So 20 by 10 is 200. So 200 for this amount of sizes are a very good resolution. So in this lesson, we just find out how to just resize our container. And the most important thing in resizing is that we shouldn't never just touch this scale. It should remain at 1 always. And in resolution, we just understood that, well, the ratio between the base resolution and the highest number in our sizes would be our resolution. So the ratio more than 5 is somehow a production quality. The ratio of 10 is for those big production movies, because it takes lots of time to just calculate the effects in this resolution. And the resolution of the ratio of 2 or 3 is somehow a lower simulation, we call it. So, well, we can just finish this video for now, and in the next lesson we're going for the emitters. Hey guys, let's start the second lesson. In the previous lesson we just talked about the container and how is the importance of measuring the resolution. In this lesson we are going for emitters. Let's start creating a 3D container by clicking on this icon, or you can just go to the fluid tab in FX go to the fluid tab and click on this 3D container. As you can see, when you just create a 3D container, by default it will create an emitter for you. So what is an emitter? To understand it better, I just will bring this emitter out of this container and make its resolution higher. Let's do that. Okay, we have the size of 10, so for now the resolution, I think the ratio of 5 would be great, so we're going for 50 resolution. Okay, now if I just hit play, you can see that nothing happened. We have no density, no temperature, no velocity, nothing. It's empty. But the reason that we don't have any of these properties, any of these attributes, is that's where the emitters comes in. The emitter, the main role of emitter is that, as you can see in the fluid emitter, we have the fluid attributes. Emitter will bring these attributes, density, heat, heat means temperature, fuel, all of these attributes to our container. So if I just, let me increase it like 1000 and hit the playback button. Okay, now if I just bring the emitter in, as you can see, now we have density. Okay, so the main role of the emitter is that it will create all the attributes for us, like temperature, velocity, density. And the emitters have I think four types. Here in the fluid emitter, you can just open the basic emitter attribute tab, and here in emitter types we have omni, surface, curve, and volume. To understand the difference between these, I'm going to just have some modification to this container. Let's just increase the size in X, like this would be great. And now, as you can see, the resolution is decreased because in previous, when our size was 10, our ratio would be 5, but now our ratio is somehow like 1.5, and it's so lower. So we should at least go for 90 or 100 to get the ratio of 3. Okay, now we have an omni emitter here. Let me just put it in this side. If you want to have multiple emitters in your container, just grab your container, go to your fluid tab, here add edit container. Here in the emitter, you can just go to the properties or just click on the emitter. Okay, now when I just click on the emitter, it will create an emitter in the origin of the container, and it's omni, so I can go for surface or curve or volume. Now I'm going for volume, and here is our volume. Let me just place it here. Okay, to create a surface emitter, you should have a polygon mesh. So if you don't have a polygon mesh, you can just create it. So let me just create an sphere like this, put it here, and grab your polygon mesh, grab your container, and click on emit from object. And now, as you can see, the emitter type is surface, and it will create an emitter on this sphere and will emit from this, okay, with this shape. And the last one is the curve. Okay, so let me just create curve. Go to the create curve tool, see curve, and just a simple shape, nothing very important. But I don't make it emitter for now. Let it just be here. Okay, let me just see the difference between these 3 emitters, because in maybe all cases you go for these 3. I mean, I've never used the curve before because it has some kind of issues with it, and you will see in a minute. Okay, now here we have three emitters. The first one is a omni, the second one is the surface, and the third one is our volume. So let's just hit play. Okay, as you can see, the omni emitter is a kind of emitter that it somehow emits in all directions, and now because we have the buoyancy, it will just increase and goes upward. But so the omni emitter will emit in all directions. It's somehow like sun, the light goes in every direction. And as you can see here in surface, it just create an emitter, and it's exactly like our sphere. So if I maybe just scale it like this, and maybe like this in Y, and hit play, it's exactly, the emitter is exactly like the shape of our polygon mesh. And that would be great, because in most cases we're going for this type of emissions, because like you wanna emit from a tire of a car, or a body of a woman or a man, anything. You should just extract the faces that you want to emit from, and then emit from it. So in most cases we will go for this kind of emitter, emit from mesh or object, and the emit from volume. And the emit from volume is seriously handy, because in lots of cases we don't see the emission area, so we can just create a container and an emitter like this. You can also scale it and emit now from it. And one thing that is really great with the emitter type volume is that you have lots of shapes, like a sphere. Now we have an sphere, and we can just emit from it, or cylinder, or cone, torus. And yes, we have these three that are mainly used for our emitter, and in most cases you will go for the emit from object or the emit from volume. But we also have emit from curve. As I said, maybe I've never used it in project, maybe just in my tests or my R&Ds, but never tried it. I just tried it, but it's not trustable. Let me delete these emitters and make this lower, like 10 would be great. And I think we can change it back to 50, the ratio of 1. As you can see here, our curve, let me just place it in the container. Grab your curve, then grab your container, then go for with curve. Okay, as you can see, we can use this curve as just the velocity, or we can even emit density from it, even emit temperature from it. Okay, now we're just going for density. Okay, so I just want this curve to be emitted density. Okay, just hit apply, and well, let it just do its things. Okay, now hit play. Well, did I hit play? Hit play. As you can see, it just emits just in the first frame. Okay, and well, that's one of the issues with the curve. Whatever you do, it just create in the first frame, and it just not emit continuously, and that's a problem. The second problem is that when you just change the resolution, like change it to 20, well, it just disappear. That's why I just said that the curve is not trustable. and I never trust it. Well, so if you just want to use the emitters, the best type I think is the mesh, and in the second place is volume, and maybe in some cases you can use omni, but I myself never use the curve. Okay, let's just create the emitter again here, and let's see the other properties. Well, as I said, you can add these density, heat, and fuel attributes in your container. And something that is really important to know is that the container, the main reason that we have container is that this container will describe the quality of our fluid, but the emitter will describe the quantity of it. So if you just want more density in your simulation, let's just increase the size. Maybe 50 is good. If you want, you know that's another reason that I don't like the curve, because it will ruin your 3D container. Now whatever I do, I can just delete this curve. So I should delete my container, then create it again, and that's a downside of it. Okay, we're going for the resolution of 50. As I said, now imagine that you have this emitter with this amount of density, and you just want to increase the amount of density. Well, in some cases I saw artists, 3D FX artists, that increase the density in density scale, with density scale, and that's really wrong to do, because this density scale is kind of a multiplier to all of these attributes. It's multiply all of these attributes by this number, so it's not just for increasing the density. So if, as I said, the container is for the quality of our gas and our fluid, but if you wanna have some changes in quantity, like you wanna increase the density, you should go with emitter. Now let's just increase it, and maybe 10 is great to see. Okay, now if I hit play, you can see we have much more density in our container. So just have this in your mind, that the emitter is for the quantity. So you can just change the density, increase or decrease it, and change the heat or fuel, and we will describe this in next lessons. And here we have also a fluid drop-off. The fluid drop-off is somehow is like a gradient. When you have no fluid drop-off, it means that we will have a constant density in our emitter, but as we increase it, it's kind of like a gradient. So at the center of our emitter, we will have more density, more heat, temperature, and as we just go out of the emitter, the surround of our emitter, it will just decrease the amount of this density, heat, and fuel. So if you want to have a sharp simulation, sharp effects like the fire, in fire we have lots of nice and crispy flames, so you don't want any of the drop off, because we need those kind of crispy and detailed flames. But in some cases, like you want a puffy smoke or steam, maybe you can just have some kind of drop off. Never goes with the high numbers, because it will ruin your simulation. So I think we discussed lots of the attributes of emitter, the most important ones, and we will go for these other things like the turbulence, like the speed attributes. We'll go for this in the following lessons. Yes, that's it for this lesson, and thanks for watching, guys. Thank you. Hey guys, now that we have the knowledge of using 3D containers and emitters, now it's time to go and start our zombie project. So let's start with creating a folder and make that folder our project folder. So as I said, the first step in creating your and starting your project is to have a folder and then set it as your project. So everything, any of your object and your scene, if you just want to save them, you will save them in that project. And in the later, maybe you just want to copy that folder and you just want to use it in another computer, another PC. So in that time you have no problem, and you should just set your project in that folder. And in most cases, in all of the project that I've just worked on, well, you will have a project folder and you will always work in that folder. Okay, so now we're going to create a folder in my desktop, and I just call it zombie on fire. Okay, now that we have this folder in the desktop, we can go to our Maya, and this is a fresh Maya. So now we can go to the file, set project. Okay, and we can just go here, copy the path, and we should go to desktop. Okay, now we are in desktop and we have our folder. Just click on your folder and press on this button, set. And because this is our first time that we want to work in that folder, and we want to just make it as our set project, so you just said that select another location or create default workspace, and we just want to create our default, so click on this. Okay, now if you go to the folder, now if you go to the folder, you can see that it creates a mail file for you and it just says workspace. Now always we should first, when we just open Maya, we just set project on this folder and then we work on our zombie project. Okay, as you can see here in my desktop, and I have another file, and that's my zombie file. Okay, and I will upload this file also for you. Well, I just Control C and going to my project file and create a folder. I just call it object. All of my objects, my anything that I just want to import to my scene, I will just have those objects in my obj folder. So now I have this walking.fpx file, that is my zombie. Okay, now we are ready to save this scene. This is an empty scene, but because we want to always work in the project, so our first scene, my first scene always is an empty scene. And I will because we have set project, now if we just open the scene, it will go straight to your zombie on fire folder. So just create a folder and call it scene, and we just call it V01. Well, I think I just did a mistake. I just go to the open. We should save our scene. Just go to the save scene, and here in the zombie on fire and in the scene, we can just save our scene, V01. Okay, now we have our scene. Now we can import our zombie and see what we have. Okay, So just grab your walking.fbx and import it, and that's it. Now we have our zombie in our scene, and as you can see, this is our model and the animation that we are going to work on. And this is its animate. It's about 121 frame, and you know, if you just want to know that you are in the right FPS, now we are in 24 FPS. So just grab some of your joints to see the keyframes, and hit this button to see the last keyframe. And as you can see here, we have some float numbers here, and it shows that we are in the wrong frame per second, in the wrong FPS. So let me change it from 24 to 25, and well, it's not right either, so we can go for 30. And now we can see that we have an integer number, and so we know that we have just 30 frame per second animation. Just save it, and this is 121, so we can go for 121, and the animation starts from 0. Now we can have the right animation with the right speed. Okay, so we will work on this model and this animation for the rest of our project. Well, let me just press the 6 button on my keyboard, and now we can see that we have some textures, but it has some transparency in it, so I can just go to the material and break the connection for the transparency. Okay, so now we can see that here is our zombie animation, and we're going to have some fire on this model. So I think we can just finish this lesson now and start from the next lesson. We're going to just have some work on the areas that we just want to emit fire from. So in the next lesson, we can go and have more fun with this zombie model. Okay, thanks. So now that we have set up our project, now we can just create our container. So let's just click on this icon to create our 3D container. And as you can see, our container is really small for this character. This character is in real scale, so we can just resize our container here. And as I just said in the lesson that we just discussed about the container, we shouldn't just scale this parameter in channel box. Okay, so we will resize it in here. Let me go for 100. Well, no, maybe 150. Well, that's okay for now, and maybe we can go for 160 for the height. Let me see. Well, we need more, 200. That's okay for now. And for the Z, we can because it just move in the Z direction like this. Okay, we need to have much more size in the Z direction. Okay, so well, let me go for 300 and see what we get. This is the first frame, so we don't need these back spaces, so we just move the container in the Z like this. I think here should be okay. And at the end, well, we need a little more. As you can see, its finger just passed the container, so we can maybe go for 300. maybe 10 or 320. I think that should be okay. Well, we can go for 310 and just move it in the Z. Okay, that's okay in the Z direction. Now let's go for X. Well, first of all, when you just create it on the container, it just creates a emitter for you by default. So just delete the emitter. We don't need that. We will create our own. So let me see that if we are okay in the X or not. Well, this is the furthest it can go in the positive X, and so we are okay in this part. And well, maybe see in the X. Well, maybe we can just shrink it here. We don't need that much space, so maybe we can go for 140, 130. Okay, and we can just move it here a little bit. Okay, I think that's awesome. And we can go a little more for the y-axis, maybe 230. Well, that's much. 210, and we can just resize it from the right side. Okay, as you can see, I think now we are in a good spot for our container size. Okay, so we have everything for our container, and we can just go for the resolution. And well, before we can just change the resolution, the most important thing is that we should just define our emitter. Now we have no emitter in the scene. As you can see, if I just hit play, nothing will happen. And of course, as you know, we just want to make fire of this zombie character, and we just, we don't want, and we don't want all of its body to just burn. We just want part of it, like for example this part, and at the knees, and here just the elbows. So we should have a way to just make it happen, and that's by painting these areas. Okay, so in the next lesson we're going to create our own emitter. We should just brush some areas and paint some areas, and then work on our emitter. Okay, so we'll go for it in the next lesson. Okay, now it's time to work on our emitter. As I said in the previous lesson, we're not going to emit fire from all of the character body. We just want some of its body to just be on fire. So first of all, we just need to create an Alembic file from this character, because these three meshes are for our render purposes, and we don't want to mess up with this. So just Control G and group them, and it's our render meshes. Okay, so just grab these three meshes and shift right click and combine them. Now we have one single mesh, and we can export Alembic from this mesh. So we can export Alembic, and well, let me reset the setting. We need to be in time slider. We need it to be from 0 to 121. And the most important thing in the Alembic settings is that we should check all of these boxes to have no problem with the Alembic. And of course, the file format should be HTF5. Okay, so now just hit the export selection, and as you can see, because we are working on our project Zombie on Fire, it just created a path format, a cache folder, and also an Alembic folder. So in this we just will save our character animation, and it's in Alembic, of course. Let me export it. And I think it's a little bit slow because of our container here. If we just disable it, it should be much faster than that. Okay, now it's finished, and we can just hit the Control Z button, because we don't want, as I said, we don't want to mess around with these files. We don't want to combine them. We just want them as they are now. Okay, now that we have our Alembic, we can just go to the cache and import our Alembic file. Okay, just import it. Well, let me just hide the render meshes, and as you can see here, we have our Alembic. It has some joints, and it's not because of the Alembic, it's because of the heap files. We can just hide the joints. Okay, as you can see, we have our animation as an Alembic. And to see it better, we can just go to the legacy default viewport, and as you can see now, you can just have a better visualization. And of course, I don't know why, but in viewport 2, when you just want to have some brushes and paint the mesh, you can see the areas that you're painting, of course. Okay, so well, we don't need these textures because we will create our own, because we want to just paint them. So for now, let's just create a Lambert for that. Well, it's not really important. So we have our character, and we can work on the painting areas. Okay, so let's just grab our character and right click, go to the paint and 3D paint. Okay, the first thing in the paint we should do is we should just assign a texture to it. Just click on this assign, and we can go for a resolution like 1024. Okay, and keep this image format to the TIFF. Okay, now assign the texture. Now you can see that your brush can work on this mesh. So we're going to, first of all, here the float is, it suddenly make all of the meshes the black. Okay, and now with this color we can just work on the areas that we want. So grab the B, hit the B, and just with the mouse, just you can resize your brush, and we just want some of the parts to be emitted the fire. So let me go for those parts, like like this part. Just you can just paint wherever you want. We want like these areas, and in this leg we need these areas. Well, I just like all of its feet to be on fire, not the back, but maybe like this. When you just create these painting, these brushing things, well, you can always change them. You can see the result, and if you just like the result, you can keep it and as you want, and if you really didn't like the result, you can just paint the areas again. Okay, so there is no problem. Well, maybe a little bit in these areas. Okay, I think we are in a good spot for that. Well, now we have fire in the white areas. Well, I think that should be enough. Well, we can just change it in the future if we don't like it. We should see. Okay, so when you just finish painting, and don't forget to just click the save texture, because if you don't save it, when you just close your Maya and then open it, you should just paint again. So just save it and it will automatically save it on your project, as you can see in Zombie on Fire. Okay, so let's close this, and now we can go and apply this painting, this texture on our emitter. Okay, so we will do this in the next lesson. Okay, now we can create our emitter. So first of all, let me just rename this mesh as an emitter mesh. Okay, now we can just grab this mesh and our container, then go to the FX, to fluids, and emit from object. Okay, now as you can see, if I just hit play, well, nothing happens. And why? Well, first of all, is because we have a really low resolution container. Well, we can go for 150 for now. And in the emitter, let me see, everything is okay. Now we should see something. Okay, as you can see now, well, we have our emitter and it just emits from all over the character body. So the first thing we should do is that assign our texture to the emitter, so that we just have emitted from these white areas. So let me go to the hypershade. Okay, now if you go to the textures, you can see your texture and the name is file 5. Okay, so we can, in the fluid attributes in emitter, we have a density emission map. So it just says that if you have any map for your emission, just put it right here. So we can go for it. Just name it file 5 as your texture. Okay, now if I just hit play, you will see that we have just density and smoke from those parts, as you can see. Okay, now we are ready to move on. So let me just, there are some parameters that whenever you just create your 3D container, you always wanna go for them first, because those are some global parameters, like these boundaries. In this situation, we need no boundaries, not in X, not in even Z, but we can have it in minus Y. And of course, if you also go for none, that's not really a big deal. Okay, and in content method, we have the density in dynamic grid, we have velocity, but here we have no temperature and fuel. And as this course, as we will go for fire, so we need temperature. So just turn on dynamic grid. Okay, as I said, these are the things that you will go for, and it's not really important the simulation, the speed of your simulation. We will go for these kind of parameters just whenever we created the 3D container. Well, in dynamic simulation, always, you can go for the damping of 0.025. Okay, that just make your simulation more realistic. That's the damping that in the real life it is in the real world. So always go for 0.025, because the damp will just decrease your fluid velocity by time, and it just make it more real. If you just have some problem with it, you can just make it down, or you can just increase it, but always just go for this number and it will work great in most cases. Okay, in high detail solve, I always go for all grid, and the solver quality for this simulation that we will have, I think 30 would be great. But it just adds more detail to our simulation, and if we need it in the next lesson, we just should see the simulation. If we need more detail, we can just play with this solver quality. Okay, and of course, most of the time, all of the time, when I just have a fire, I always start with the simulation rate scale of 2. It's the time scale. It will double the speed of your simulation. Okay, so, well, these are the main parameters that most of the time I just go for. And we can also go for auto resize. I'm not the big fan of auto resize, because it just changes your simulation result. But in this case, because we don't have a fast moving object, we can just use it, because it will it will make your simulation faster. Okay, and of course your max resolution always should be more than these base resolution. So we have the base resolution of 150 here, and the max resolution of 200 in auto resize. Okay, so that should be great for now. And in the next lesson, as you can see now, well, we should work a lot on these. We just achieve what we wanted in the emitter. We just wanted to emit from some specific parts, and now we have those parts, but we have nothing like fire now. Okay, so in the next lesson, we're going through the parameters of the container and our fluid properties. Okay, so in the next lesson, we're going to work on those parts. Now that we have our emitter set up, so now we can work more on our container properties. As if I just hit play now, you can see that we just have some, they just don't move at all, as you can see. So we need to change lots of our properties. Okay, so we did our stuff with dynamic simulation and auto resize. We can go for the content detail now. In density, well, as you can see, our smoke barely move, and that's because of our buoyancy, because it's now the 1. So maybe we can go for 100. I don't know the number. Let's play it and see what we get. Now we should just move faster. Well, yes, as you can see here, now we have a smoke that just rise up, but I think we should have really faster simulation, because we need it to be fire. As you can see, when it just move its left foot, it should just rise up really faster. So maybe we can go for 500. Okay, let me see what we have. Okay, now it's much better. And of course, we don't want our smoke to rise very much, because the fire is really evaporative, and it should just disappear really soon. So we need to work on our dissipation too. So maybe, I have no idea, maybe 3. Let me see what we get. Well, yes, as you can see now, our smoke disappear really fast. Okay, now we're just getting close to what we need. Okay, one of the parameters that really have effect on the fire looks is the tension. Okay, this tension will have those nice and stretchy look for the fire. So maybe we can go for the 0.3 in both the tensions. Okay, let me see what we have now. I think the amount of smoke that we have is really less, we should just make them more in amount. And of course, can you see some stepping in these areas, when our object just move a little bit fast, we have some stepping in our emitter. So we can go to our fluid emitter, and well, we should just have adjustment in these parameters. First of all, we need no fuel, because we just will work with the temperature. So let me turn it off. And in fire, we need no fluid drop off. The drop off will just create some diffusion in the emitter areas. Okay. And as I said, when our character just move a little bit fast, we have some stepping in our smoke, so we can just solve it with the motion streak. This is for the fast moving objects. And of course, if you have a fast moving object, just go to the dynamic simulation and, well, just increase the substep, and that will work a lot. When you just increase your substep, it's the best way to use it is just to increase the substep and check the emit in substeps. Okay, so now we can think, well, what should we do now? Well, as I said, we need more smoke. So to have more smoke, just go to the basic emitter attributes, and our rate is now on 100. Just do it 1,000. I think now that should work a lot better. Well, let me see what we have now. Okay, as you can see, we have more density now, and well, as you can see, we need lots of more turbulence in our emitter, and of course in our smoke. So we should change some more parameters. Let me see. Okay, in the emitter we have a fluid emission turbulence. Okay, we can just crank it up, just go for higher numbers to just see what we will get. And of course, we have a emission speed attribute. Well, now when our meshes just move, it has some speed. So if we want our fire to be influenced by that speed, this is the parameter that we should change, the inherent velocity, and that's a great option to just make our fire and our effects more real. So I think if we just get the 0.7% of our speed of our mesh, would be really cool. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Okay. Now we're getting closer to what we want, but we should just have more tweak on the velocity and of course the turbulence. Okay. I think we're good for now for this lesson, and in the next lesson we're going to tweak the velocity and the turbulence attributes. Okay, let me see what we have from the last lesson. Okay, this is our simulation from the last lesson. This is our latest result. Well, as I can see, maybe we need more buoyancy, because the fire is really moving fast, and our smoke is not really moving that fast. So I think we should maybe double our speed. Well, let me just double it and see what will be the result. And of course we have some problem with the emitter turbulence. Okay, so first of all, let me go for the density, well, now we have 500. Let me just change it to 1000 and see what we will get. As we just increase the buoyancy, we should of course increase the dissipation too, because, well, we want it to dissipate faster. Maybe like 7, we can just double it in dissipation too. Okay, and of course our fluid emitter, we have some problem with the turbulence, because our scale is in a real scale, so I think we need more turbulence. And of course, because it's from the emission, we need it to be really fast. We don't want to see the turbulence in emitter, we just want to see some turbulence as a whole. Okay, and of course, the turbulence frequency, now our frequency is really low, so to make it bigger, to make our frequency bigger, we should just decrease them, like 0.5. Well, I don't know if these numbers are working or not, but we'll see. And always a little bit of detail will be great, not too much, because if we go for the high resolution simulations, these details will have some artifacts. Okay, and as I said, most of the time the inherent velocity will make your simulation more realistic, so maybe I go for 1. Okay, so let me see what we have now. Now we should have much faster, well, simulation with more turbulence in the emitter. Okay, as you can see, and that's not really bad, I think. Okay, now that we just achieved this, we can, can you see that our fire, our smoke is really straight, and that's because of the velocity and the turbulence that we don't really use them. So we can go for the velocity and the turbulence. Okay, so because we have fire, we need lots of swirl. In fire we need big swirls, not big, the higher this value, the more detail you will have in your simulation. Okay, and for the turbulence, as I said, because this is fire and we really need it to be turbulent, so we're going for the strength of 1, and like the turbulence we can go for 0.1. And the speed is really important, because in fire we don't want to see the patterns of the turbulence, so as we have higher speed we can see those patterns, and as the fire is really fast, so maybe we can go for 1 or more than 1. Okay, I think in turbulence in emitter we have that too. Yes, the turbulence speed that will help us to just prevent others to see the turbulence in our scene. Okay, so let's see what we get now. Well, now we should have more turbulent and more swirly smoke and fire. Okay, as you can see, we don't have those straight lines, and that's great, that's what we want. Well, and now as you can see, we just have this white smoky thing here, and in the next lesson we're going to work on the temperature, and of course if we have time we can go for shading too. Okay, see you in the next lesson. Okay, now we can work on our temperature. The temperature is really important for the shading part, so let's just go for the temperature. Okay, and here as you can see we didn't touch any of these parameters. Okay, but before just go for the temperature, as if I just play, as you can see we have just some white smokes, okay, and we can't see any of the fiery things, okay. So let me pause, and we can go in the shading tab, just change this color from the white to a darker color like this, okay. And now you can have a more visualization of what you will get in the render. Okay, now we can work on the temperature. Okay, so because this is a real scale simulation, so we need a really high buoyancy in our temperature. The more buoyancy we have, the more stretchy look of the fire we will get. Okay, so now that we have a buoyancy of 1000 in the density, so we know that we should go really much higher than this value of 3. I don't know, like 100. We should see what we will get. And when you just make the buoyancy really high, you should of course make your dissipation much higher. Well, in fire, in this kind of fire looks that we need lots of detail and crispy flames, we really don't need any diffusion because it just ruins those details. And of course we need really more turbulence, and of course this turbulence in the temperature is really sensitive. So when I say we need really more, I think maybe the 0.3 should be great. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Well, as you can see, I think the movement of our fire is really great. We have good turbulence, we had good dissipation. I think everything is great, and now it's time to go for the shading part. We can just achieve really great results in the shading tab, and I think now it's time to go for it. Okay, in the next lesson we'll start working on the shading. Thanks, guys. Well, it's time to have some fun with the shading and rendering process. Okay, so before just going for the shading, well, let me just create some ground. Okay, well, we can have this plane, well, because if we just want to have render this scene, we need have some plane, okay, some ground, and we somehow need some wall in these areas because we don't want it to be some infinite things. Okay, let me just duplicate it and change its pivot like this. Okay, oops, let me go for the discrete rotation. Okay, and this is not bad, and we can just duplicate it again and have another wall like this, maybe, yes, in here. Okay, now we need light, and go to the Arnold tab. In light we need an skydome light, and of course a directional light. Here is the directional light. Well, we can just have it like this, or I think this is great. Okay, so now we can start working on our shading. So let's just play the simulation, well, maybe till frame 40 to get some nice results of our simulation, then working on the shading. It shouldn't just take too much time. Okay, well, I think this is great. Let me just stop the simulation. Okay, well, a little bit more. Well, now it's cool. Okay, so just let me render and see what we have. So go to the Arnold and Arnold render view. Okay, so as you can see now, the Alembic file is rendered. So let me pause the render, and we can just hide our emitter mesh and unhide our real meshes. Okay, the render meshes. Now if I just hit render, well, it just creates some TX from the file. Okay, now this is what we have, and that's not really bad. Well, first of all, let me just have some adjustment with the dome light. It's, you know, the intensity is really high. We can just go for something like this. I think it's much better now. Yes. Okay, so now it's time to go for the shading part. So select the fluid, and well, here is the transparency, and you can just make it more transparent, or, you know, as you can see here. But the first thing that we should do is to have work on the opacity. But before we just start on this, you should know that now we are working on the lower res simulation, and we should just have more higher res simulation. But now we're just working on this. Okay, the most important thing in fire is the look of your opacity ramp, you know, because we need those crispy things, those nice details in our fire, in our render. So we really should have some work on this area. Okay, so the ramp that I'm gonna show you now is, you know, kind of the thing that I just gained from these years that I've just worked in production things. Okay, so this ramp almost work for every fire that you just will render. So we're going to have some look like this. Okay, you know, this is somehow the look of the fire. You know, we will have something like this. You know, this is like the crispiness of the fire, and, you know, here we have it like this. Okay, I think it should just work fine for us. And as you can see, now we have almost no fire, and that's because of this input bias. Okay, we can just tweak it this and make it more and more. Now as you can see, we somehow, well, I think now we are good to go. You know, as you can see, we don't have much detail, but if we just have higher resolution in our simulation, we will get a lot nicer detail. Okay, now we can work on our incandescence and our, you know, the color of the look of our fire. So, well, as you can see, this look is not that bad, but, you know, we need more contrasty look and more detailing look in our fire. Okay, so let me just adjust it to see what we will get. Okay, well, yes, that's much better, and I think we can go for, well, something like this. It shouldn't be that much bad. Maybe we can go for 5. Yes. And most of the time too, if you just wanna create a good result, you should have some contrasty colors near each other. Like for example, I just grab this one and put it at the first. These are something that really make it more real. Well, I think it's not that bad. The reason that I can't work too much on the shading right now is because we have a low-res simulation. So let's just call it good as now, and we can just make our simulation more higher res. Okay, so let's first save our scene. Okay, and well, now we have 150. Maybe we can go for 200, and for the auto resize we can go for 250. Okay, that's much better, but maybe we can just make them higher like 250 and 300. I think that's much better. Okay, let's just save the scene again and just go for and simulate it till I think the frame 40. So now I pause the video and then I come back. Let's see what we will get. Okay, I just stopped the simulation at frame 25, and I think that would be cool now. We have much higher resolution now, and let's see what we get in the render. Okay, as you can see now, we have much more detail in our fire, and I think our shader is look great too. So I think now it's time to go for some render sequence, and we will create the render settings in the next lesson, and we'll see what we will get from this scene. Okay, now we can adjust the render settings, and then we can go for the rendering process. Okay, so let's open the render settings, and as you can see, we're working with Arnold. Okay, and in the Arnold renderer, first we're going for the camera samples, and I think 3 is great. And we can go for higher number for the volume indirect, like 3, and that's the noises that we will see in the fire and in our fluids. Okay, and we're going to save our images. As you can see, it just created for us a folder as named images in the Zombie on Fire project, and we can just call this 01, just like this, as you can see here. But we need to just have some more changes here like this, because we want to have this sequence, render sequence. So well, we need the frame range, and we need it from 0, 1 is cool. We need it from 1 to 121, and well, the HT540 is great. And let me just create a camera. Okay, so before that, let's just disable the evaluation of our fluid. Now we can just play it in almost real time. So now I go to the create camera and create a camera, then go to the panels, look through selected. Okay, now we can position our camera like this. Okay, I think this frame is great for the first frame, and let me hit the S to keyframe it. and enable the auto keyframe, and we can go to the last frame and we can have a little bit backward movement. Well, it should be here like this. Let's see what we get. Well, it's not really bad. And we can make the camera movement linear. I'll just go to the animation and the graph editor, and you can just make all of them linear. Okay, that's cool. Okay, now what should we do? Well, let me again go to the render settings, and instead of perspective we can now have the camera 1. Okay, and that should be awesome. Well, we can go for the because we will get the final result. I think we can go for the HD 1080. Okay, and I think everything is cool and great. And we can go for the abort and error because we don't want just our render stopped because of some errors. Okay, now I think we just set up everything for the render process. Let me just save our scene and we are good to go. Okay, so let's see what we get after the render. So go to the rendering and just hit the render sequence, and after the render process I will join you again. Okay, here is our final result, and well, I think we just get a really good result, and this is really a realistic result. And well, that's it for this course, and hope you enjoy this course and will get lots of new things from this course. And thanks guys, thanks.